Welcome to the Handyman Pros Radio Show. Home improvement and maintenance tips from the pros.
This episode, The Uninvited.
Larry here with another edition of the Handyman Pros Radio Show. This edition is titled The Uninvited. To help me explain, I'm here with my buddy John. John, how's it going today?
It's going great, Larry. How are you doing today?
I'm fabulous. So tell me a little bit about this title, The Uninvited.
Well, The Uninvited. We're going to talk about screens and filters and keeping stuff out of your house.
And are we keeping anything else out of the house?
You mean like a mother-in-law?
I thought you told me you turned all the lights off and hid under the couch.
Don't tell her that.
That's it. There you go. So we recorded this series down. We were actually on location, and so I just wanted to let you know. It sounds like it's two segments because it actually is. We did a recording from the field, and so here it is.
Well, hello everybody. I'm here at beautiful Lake Lanier, and I'm here with my buddy Larry. My name is John. And I thought I would stop by today and just talk with Larry. He's got a job he's doing here at the lake, and it's a pretty interesting job. It's coming along very well. And Larry, maybe you want to tell us a little bit about what's going on here.
Yeah. So today we're actually screening in a porch. This is under a deck, and we are taking. It's a pretty big porch, and we're actually making it a screened-in porch for the people. We're going to add some doors, a couple of screen doors. We're going to screen in all of the openings, I guess I'll call them. They're columns that are in on the deck, and we've got a beautiful location here. We're looking out over the water. It's really quite a nice day.
It's very nice. You know, one of the things I wanted to ask you about was, you know, I noticed all this these kind of little channels and things that you're using here to screen in. This is a new kind of system, I believe, that they come out with, and that you can find at the big box stores. To help put the channels up around these openings and then screen it in. Can you tell me a little bit about how that goes?
Yeah, sure. So the traditional products that most people are familiar with are going to be aluminum channel stock is what I would call it. It's a screening system where you actually build the screens out and put them in their own frame. It's made out of aluminum. And then you roll the screens in just like you do with this product, but this product actually attaches to the house. And so it's a channel type product. It has two sides to it. They come in different widths depending on the type of lumber that you're using. So they've got it set up for 4x4 and for 2x4. And it basically allows you to do the same thing. I think the biggest advantage that I see from it is you're not dealing with that aluminum track. The aluminum track, in my experience, has been kind of difficult to put together and actually have it hold together. The other thing that the aluminum track does is you generally have to put a bumper strip in to actually attach the frame of the aluminum frame to the window itself. So you actually have to do twice as much work. This product, as you've seen, John, it's a tracking system, and you basically screw the tracking system up to the studs or whatever it is that you have. This particular place has 6x6 studs that have been finished off with trim, with actually nice trim wood, so it looks really, really nice. And then you put this tracking up, you roll the screens into it, and you actually snap a plastic cap on over the top to finish it off. Very, very simple system. It works, I think it works extremely well. Once you kind of get the groove, and it only takes you about one screen window to get the groove, and I say get the groove, it's just like anything, as you do it more, you get better and better at it. But once you start getting it, it's really tight. Would you agree with that, John?
Yeah, one of the things I noticed, and that was one of the comments I was going to make, is that it really finishes off nice. And the other was that so there's no pre-framing that you have to do.
No,
you're just putting this track on the outside. It looks like it's just screwed in, and then you're just taking that screen and rolling that, like you mentioned, rolling that in, and it is amazing how it tightens itself.
Yeah, it's a self-tightening type system. We're doing these particular windows that we're doing, so to give remember we're audio only, but to kind of give you but to give you an idea, these windows are about 5 feet wide, and they're a good 5 feet tall as well. Yeah. So these are big areas of the top ones. The lower portion of this, it's a double segmented section. The lower portion is smaller. But you've seen me do the top sections here, and the top sections are really tight. I mean,
Yeah.
they're extremely tight. So I really like the quality of the finished product, and it's easy to clean. You can mount these on the inside or the outside. It really doesn't matter. It just depends. This particular customer wanted them on the outside, which is fine. We've done them on the inside also. We did a deck that was up in the air, and it was going to be difficult to do them on the outside because of the height and things like that. So they did it on the inside, but really nice product. Makes a great finish.
It's a very professional look when it's done now. And then it looks like they have a trim piece that goes on over all the screws and where you have attached the screen. So it almost kind of disappears onto itself, and it looks like it's all integral part of this
of the building.
Porch.
Yeah, this particular porch is colored white. The trim strips that we have are white. They come in multiple colors, so you can change the color of the trim strip if you choose. We happen to be using black nylon screen, which works out really well for us here in North Georgia. But yeah, this is just an interesting type of system to do. Its cost is really about the same. You will spend just about the same amount of money, of actual cash money, for the tracking as you will for the aluminum track. I think the biggest advantage is you don't have to do additional wood. You don't have all that extra time that you have to do. You have to buy screws for it to put it into the wood. I'm using little lath screws. They have a very flat head, and it's quite wide, so you get good support on that. But that's the only real difference is just how you actually attach them. And I love this stuff. So
it seems like you really picked it up pretty quick. It's it looks it doesn't look very complicated to put up.
It's not. It's a great,
which is a great thing, because when I've put screens up before, they can, a lot of times it can be, it's all the little things. It's the little things that can really cost a lot of time and those kind of.
And in the traditional screens, you're dealing with metal, not with this is a plastic PVC type product, so it's plastic. It's much easier to work with. It's not sharp, so as you tell, I have no cut hands, which is a miracle. You don't have to try to put the little insert corner pieces in to make the screens actually square.
Oh, yeah,
None of that. Right. So that's a done deal. The screen actually fits. It's just a great thing. You do need a roller knife. So a traditional screen roll, what they call a roller knife, it's basically a wheel that has a groove in it that'll run the black splining. They call it splining. But you run the splining in, so you need a roller knife. That, a pair of sharps, either scissors or I'm using aviation snips, but to just cut the plastic tracking. You don't need anything. The company actually suggests using a pair of pruning shears. So you can use pruning shears to cut the track. Good idea to have a drill bit, or not a drill, but a cordless drill, because you're going to need to run the screws. It's a lot of screws.
It's a lot of screws.
A lot of screws. Yeah. We're over 800 screws on this particular project, but this is a big project too. A couple of batteries, obviously, to do that. But all in all, pretty simple project.
Well, I guess my other question is, it looks like, how big is the screen, the rolls of screen come? Because it looks like you've got a couple of big windows or big openings that you're screening into.
I think the biggest screen that I've seen, what I'm using is 60-inch and 72-inch screen widths. They come in various different lengths. I think the widest I've ever seen, I think you can get screening, I think it's in 96, so it's an 8-foot opening.
Wow.
I have yet to do any that are that big. I have done some 72-inch ones.
Yeah.
And they go up just as well. They actually tighten up, and they look really good.
It's very impressive. Very impressive, and I'm sure the homeowner is going to be really happy with the outcome of this.
I hope so.
Okay.
They better be. They've got a bill to pay.
Is there anything else you want to add to this job? I mean, it looks like it's just rocking and rolling.
Yeah, we'll post some pictures on the show notes when we get done. We won't name any names, but if you go to the big box stores, you'll see the product. It's a really well-known name. It's pretty good stuff. So.
All right, well, that's it for this segment, folks. We thought we'd just bring you something from the field today.
It's from the field.
It is from the field, and we shall talk to you folks soon. Bye-bye.
We mentioned in the last segment that we were in the field. We recorded a short clip about where we were, and we thought you might find it interesting.
Well, I'm back at the Lake Lanier here in North Georgia, and I'm here with Larry. And Larry, I just wanted to on this quick segment, just wanted to ask you a little bit about this location. I mean, it's a beautiful location. It's we're here in September, and leaves are turning. It's just an absolute gorgeous day.
Yeah, it's after Labor Day. As you can tell, there's no boats out there. It's beautiful.
I see that. Totally flat out there. It's beautiful.
Unlike the summertime when the boats are so crazy that you can't even stand it. It's just insane. But so Lake Lanier, for those of you out there in show listener land, we are about 30 minutes north of the metro Atlanta area, about 45 minutes north of Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, where many of you have been. But this is a man-made lake. It was created by the Buford Dam, which dams up the Chattahoochee River. It was started in 1954.
Actually, it was a dam project.
It was a dam project. Dam project. Yes, that's right. It's kind of like this project we're on here today. Of course, one of the great things about being a handyman, right, John, is that you do get to go to different houses and you get to sit at different locations.
Exactly.
We're really fortunate to do, or I'm very fortunate to do quite a bit of work here at Lake Lanier. So you can't get too much worse than this. Worst case scenario, I can go down and take a swim. But anyway, Lake Lanier is a beautiful lake. Some of you might have read about Lake Lanier, and I'm just going to throw this out there. It's not haunted, folks. It's not. There's this great myth going around the internet that Lake Lanier is haunted, John. It's haunted. Have you ever heard that?
I have, yes.
It's BS.
Yeah, I know.
It's not haunted. If you take the number of people that actually come out on this lake, I'm always amazed there aren't more deaths on this lake per year than there actually are, especially when you see people that don't know how to drive boats driving boats. We're just going to leave it at that. Mm-hmm. We're not going to pass any judgment, but when you have a pontoon boat and you have 17 people in the bow and nobody in the stern and the prop is actually coming out of the water, might be time to rebalance.
Not a good scene.
Yeah, you might want to rebalance
That's not a good scene.
The boat.
That's an accident looking for a place to happen.
That's exactly what it is. And so anyway, we service it. This does work as the reservoir for most of the greater metro Atlanta area as well, for several counties in the area. And it's a beautiful lake. It is kind of a deliverance type lake where when they dammed it up, they moved everybody out of this area. There's still foundations of the houses and stands of trees and things that still exist underwater. There's a racetrack up around Gainesville, Georgia, that's actually underwater, that when the water goes out, you can still see it and things like that. So beautiful day at Lake Lanier. Folks, if you get a chance, come on up. We love it.
All right. Well, thanks for the information, Larry, and that'll wrap up this segment. It's time for the tip of the week.
It is time for the tip of the week. John, what's the tip of the week this week?
Well, Larry, the tip of the week is, well, let me first ask you. Have you ever had a fire in your kitchen?
Fortunately, no.
Okay.
But
it can be a very scary thing. And this week, the tip would be, let's talk about fire extinguishers.
I think that's a good idea. Let's talk about fire extinguishers.
So if we're going to talk about those fire extinguishers that we hardly ever think about, we hardly ever see, but how handy they can be when you have
when you actually need it, right?
When you have it, I was going to rhyme it with an emergency.
Always the comedian. So I do have a question. So, number one, does everybody out there have a fire extinguisher in their house? I think that's the place to start, right?
Well, that would be. I have been, I have been in those situations where I haven't had one, but I have a couple now. Just because I've
learned it the hard way,
and I've learned, and had some experiences in the past in another job. But so Larry, tell me a little bit about people need to go out and buy fire extinguishers. You can find there are all kinds of fire extinguishers. Where can they find a fire extinguisher, for the home use?
So you can purchase fire extinguishers really at any big box store, any hardware store, most not convenience stores, most warehouse clubs and things like that. I think the biggest thing to talk about is the National Fire Prevention Safety Association has a classification. They rate them A, B, C, and D. And so what really is relevant to us is going to be class A and B. C and D is, C is for like electrical fires, like major electrical fires, and that's not going to happen in your house. Or if it does, you need to just get out of your house. And class D is for flammable metals. So if you had magnesium or aluminum catches on fire or something like that, these are not the type of fire extinguishers you're generally going to have in your house. These are more industrial type fire extinguishers. But type A is for combustible items like wood and paper and things like that. And class B is for combustible liquids such as gasoline, grease, that sort of thing. So we all know, or at least I hope we know, right, that you don't pour like water on a grease fire.
Never
right?
pour water on a grease fire.
Yeah, what happens?
It spreads like crazy. It throws the fire everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah, because it actually is, it's chemical, it's physical actually, I shouldn't say that, but the grease is lighter than the water, it floats up on top, and of course all it does is spread it, right?
Yep.
That's all it does.
Yep.
You can throw water, obviously, on a paper fire, on a wood fire, that'll work, but it's still better to have an actual fire extinguisher. They're going to work really, really well.
And also, if you do have a small little fire or something in a frying pan or something like that, you can use salt.
You can use salt. You can use baking soda. You can use other things
for small things. But right now we just wanted to give you a couple tips on an actual fire extinguisher that could really save your house and save lives.
Save lives is the goal. If not having a fire extinguisher, and John, maybe you've got a story back there, but when you didn't have a fire extinguisher, what happened?
It really is. It's a panic.
It's a panic.
Yeah. It's like any other emergency. You're never really prepared for it, and then when it actually takes place, it'll really ruin your day.
It really ruins your day. Yeah, it makes what could be a very simple thing turns into a very very complicated thing.
Right.
It could be very very expensive too.
Right.
So just a question on that: where in the house do you think you should have fire extinguishers?
Well, absolutely in the places that you use fire the most. In your kitchen, your garage. You've got some flammable liquids out there. Guys, if you have a shop and you have flammable liquids that you're storing around,
Gasoline,
the alcohol and things like
sawdust.
Anything
that flashes, right?
Exactly, those kind of things. So I always want to keep it handy.
Yeah, maybe one if you have a fireplace too, somewhere where at least you know where it is, near your fireplace.
Mm-hmm.
So those are two places, and we're not trying to spend your money, folks, but one of the things we do, we want to try to make sure you're safe, and you need to know where they are. In that vein, John, what are some significant maintenance items to fire extinguishers? What do people need to do?
All of them have a gauge on there. Make sure that the gauge is up. These are little throwaway type of fire extinguishers that you can buy.
Right.
They have little mounting brackets things, but always look at them. Always shake them. It's a powder that's in there, and that powder will compact after a while. So every 6 months or a year, take that thing and flip that thing around a little bit to loosen up that powder.
And the gauge should read 0, right?
The gauge should not read 0.
Oh, just
no,
checking.
Yeah, you're testing me.
I am testing you. That's right. Gauge should be in green, right?
No, really, the painting looked like a butterfly. So, and the other thing is that you want to check it for there's no dents, cracks, anything like that,
right.
Where it's been it's been physically maneuvered around and smashed around.
You mean like you've been carrying it in your truck for 3 years and it's rolled around in the bed?
Yeah,
like that one.
Yeah, like that one. Like that one. So that's a couple of things here for the for the fire extinguisher and some of the things to the tip.
So let's just reiterate the points, right? So number one, we want to make sure the biggest thing is make sure you have one.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yep.
Make sure you have it in the appropriate place.
Have access to it.
And have access to it.
Yep.
And know where it is,
yep.
right? Because as you said, when it happened to you, it was confusion and you
yep.
needed to know where it was. Number three, every so often, every at least 6 months, you need to check it, right? And what do we need to do to check it? We need to check the gauge.
Right.
We need to just turn the thing over, up and down over to loosen up the powder.
Yeah.
And then just check the basic condition. And if you've got it mounted, I suppose, in your kitchen, you're not going to have much of an issue have it being dented and dinged up. But
right.
if you are carrying one, I carry one in my vehicle. And I do check mine in the vehicle for dents and dings because if it comes unstrapped, it gets
right.
knocked around.
Right.
So those are the big tips. And folks, we hope that you never have to use one. But the Boy Scout motto of always be prepared is a good thing.
And that is the tip of the week.
And there you go.
From questions at handymanprosradioshow.com, we received an email from Kim M.
Kim writes, I have a child with asthma. Can you give me some recommendations for air filtration?
We can. We actually recorded a segment from the field on air filtration, and here it is.
So folks, welcome to the Handyman Pros radio show. We're out in the field again today. I'm here with my buddy John. John, how's it going today?
Great, Larry. Great to be here.
All right, awesome. Yeah, every once in a while we're going to do some shows from the field, and so this is just kind of one of the places we were out, and we actually were doing some work on an HVAC system today. And so one of the things that we wanted to discuss, I guess, is basically a maintenance tip about your HVAC system. HVAC stands for heating, ventilating, and air conditioning, which most of you know, but if you didn't know, you now do. So with that, I wanted to ask you a question, John. Is there a thing in the HVAC system that can be problematic, perhaps?
Actually, yes, and that would be the filter.
The filter, right.
The filters are often overlooked and can cause a variety of issues and really affect the life of an air conditioner.
Yeah, it's very, as you say, it's very much overlooked. People take them for granted, and they're actually one of probably the simplest things for a homeowner to change themselves. You really don't need to pay somebody to come in and change HVAC filters. Now, John, have you changed HVAC filters for people?
I have.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Unfortunately, my understanding is you're rather expensive, and basically,
but good.
Well, it's a value proposition.
When that filter goes in,
it's in there. It may never come out.
That's a professional job.
So we do mention that, and that in most cases, and again, it's in most cases, but most cases, these are the air filters that are actually about an inch thick, and they slide in somewhere into your HVAC system. And of course, we're out on radio, so y'all can't see us. We'll post a couple of pictures in the show notes. But most of these are really simple things, and they slide in. So there's just a couple of things about filters that we think that our listening public needs to go. These are maintenance items and some of that. So number one, John, you alluded to it. It helps to extend the life of the HVAC system. Why is that? What does the filter actually do?
Well, other than, the main portion of the filter is going to be to take out all the particulates as it flows through the system, and it's going to be on your inlet. And it's going to ensure that the inside of your furnace or your air exchanger is not getting all those particulates that are moving through your system, and it's capturing those.
Particulates mainly meaning dirt.
Mainly meaning dirt, pollen, everything that's
airborne. Anything that's in the
airborne.
Yep.
That's correct.
And that includes things like pet hair too.
Pet hair, all of that.
Pet hair, dander. Dust, pollen, we'll talk about that in a minute. Insects, when you pull these filters out, you see an immense amount of stuff. And one of the other things I think that gets overlooked a lot of times, if you ever pull those filters out, man, is the lint. The lint always amazes me, how much lint there is, and lint just comes off your clothes, basically. It's little fibrous hairs that come off your clothes. So there's all this particulate in the air, and the filter's job is just to take that particulate matter out of the air so it doesn't land on your heat exchanger, basically. And your heat exchanger, its job is, what's its job, John?
Well, in the case of a furnace, it's going to take the hot air, the heated surface, and as air is pushed across that, and that exchanges that heat on that surface where it fires up. Maybe it can either be electrical or it can be gas, and the blower motor will come across.
It blows air. It blows air across it, and it either gives you heat
or cool air,
or cold, depending on which.
And out comes out of your registers comes that result.
The result, right? Hot or cold air, depending on your seasons.
Yep.
So one of the things particulate matter actually degrades the heat exchanger's ability to actually do that, right? So what it does is it tends to heat up the junk, we'll call it the trash, that lands on the heat exchanger. This makes it inefficient, and it actually ends up costing you just a little bit of money. It's not huge, but it can lead to other problems because some of this particulate can be somewhat corrosive, and it can actually injure or actually damage your heat exchanger. Now, this isn't something that happens, overnight. If you leave the filter off for 6 months or a year, it's not gonna, your whole world isn't gonna come apart. But if you do it long enough, it will cause problems. One of the other things that it does, and again, this gets back to airflow, is it takes out a lot of that particulate matter, meaning if you're sensitive to things like dust and dander and pollen and things like that, it starts taking that out of the air. So it really, in effect, it cleans your house to a degree. Would you agree with that, John?
Yeah, that's absolutely what it does.
Yeah, so it's an important thing. Now, when you're buying a filter, what are the important points to think about? Well, the biggest one is what, John? It has to do with the opening. So you need the right size. And in most cases, it's actually printed on the filter. If it's not printed on the filter, and some of the really inexpensive ones, they're not printed on the filter, you need to just pull it out, take a tape measure, and measure it. It's going to be something like 14 by 20 or 15 by 25 or something like that. There's a huge number of sizes that are available. Almost all of them are 1 inch thick. There are whole house filters that are bigger than that. We're not really talking about those right now. We're talking more about just the small ones that are pretty common that you can purchase at any big box store. A lot of the wholesale clubs have them. Pretty much, you can get them almost anywhere. Any Ace Hardware, anything like that. They're available all over the place. But one of the other things that I think people don't understand is they come in different degrees and grades, and they are rated by a rating that has to do. It's called the MERV rating, M-E-R-V. Yes. And the MERV rating, and we're not going to get into the technical definition of what the MERV rating is, but we'll just explain it that what you want is a 10 MERV rating or above, okay, as a general rule. That's going to take out most of the particulate, not all, but it's going to take out most of the particulate. And I forget what the micron size is, but I think it's like 7, I don't know if it's that tight, but it takes out about 80% of all the airborne particulate matter that's out there. There are other filters out there that are made out of fiberglass strands, and they look like a fiberglass mat, and they are a MERV rating of about 4 or 5. So they don't take out as much of the dirt and dust. Now, I don't know about you, John, but I like to have clean air when I'm breathing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I was just going to say, this really is of interest to people who have, respiratory,
ailments,
issues,
asthmas, and
ailments,
things like that.
those kind of things, and you just want to keep the inside of your house and the air as clean as possible.
As
and
clean
these
as
modern
possible.
filters are really good at that.
They're actually amazing. And so, speaking to the points of what you just said, if you're prone to allergies or you have asthma or you have any kind of respiratory health issues, there are other filters out there that are called HEPA filters, H-E-P-A. And a HEPA filter is actually a MERV rating of about 17. It takes out approximately 99% of all the airborne particulates in the air, including pollen. It will actually filter the pollen out of the air. So now, of course, what's the catch? Well, the catch is a HEPA filter is about 3 times as much money as a 10-rated MERV filter, which will cost you about $7 to $10 for a 10-rated MERV filter. The 4-rated MERV filters are 99 cents.
Yeah.
Right?
But
So this is a case of you get what you pay for.
Exactly. What's important though is for the audience out there, for people that are elderly, they seem to be a lot more sensitive to the air.
Yep.
And this is really important. So when you do change your filters, don't take it for granted.
Right.
So buy a good filter because you will notice the difference.
You will notice the difference. You'll see a lot less dust, for the people out there that actually clean their house and dust their house. If you put a good filter in, you will see less dust. You really will. It's amazing because I've noticed it in my house. And it's just amazing. So, look on it, somewhere on it, it'll say what's the MERV rating. You really want a 10 or greater. And if you're really, really sensitive, you can look at a HEPA filter. Now, John, how often should you change these filters?
So they recommend about every 3 months.
Right. And I think some of that is going to be environmental.
Yeah.
So here in North Georgia, because we are outside of Atlanta, we have that funny season called pollen season.
Big time, and coming up in March, April.
March and April, and then again here in the fall time as well. But during pollen season, I change my filters once a month.
Yeah.
Now, Atlanta is not typical. We have pollen ratings in like the 4,000, which means there's 4,000 parts per million in the particulate. And John, as you know, is your car ever yellow here?
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. Coming up here, in April, my car is going to all the cars are going to start. It looks like somebody went around with a bottle of yellow talcum powder and sprayed and just and it blew up all over the place. Yeah.
Welcome to the Southeast is what we're going to say.
It's so bad that even when you go down some of the major highways and the wind is blowing, coming off of the pine trees,
you can see it coming off the trees.
It's like a big yellow wave coming across the highway.
It's kind of an aside. I was up in the North Georgia mountains one time, and I really wasn't paying attention, but I'm looking out over this mountain view, and I see this kind of yellowish haze up over the tops of the mountains, and I'm like, holy smokes, look at that. I mean, it looked like a whole nother set of mountains with this yellow, nasty haze. Anyway, that's pine pollen. That's something that now, John, you lived in Chicago, I lived in Western New York growing up, and I lived outside of Boston at one time. Did you ever have anything like that up there?
Never.
Yeah, never. Never had that like here in the Southeast, and I know out west they don't get quite as much problems either. So that's a really unique thing. But if you live in a really dirty, and so this all came about because we were talking about changing the filters. If you live in a really dirty environment, you might want to change your filters more often. I will tell you, I have in my rental houses, I've had some people that have had pets, and I can tell you, if you have pets, especially dogs that shed a lot, or I guess cats probably too, but if you have dogs that shed a lot, you want to check your filters. If they've got a lot of hair in there, it's time to change it. It's time to change it. But manufacturer does say about every 3 months. It just really depends. Again, I do mine every 3 months except for the 3 months of pollen season because it's just nutso here. So a lot of it's environmental. We're not trying to spend your money, but we are trying to keep your house clean and keep your HVAC system running at peak efficiency. So, all right. Anything else to add, John?
No, I don't have anything else to add. I mean, it's just I think from the listening standpoint, it's trying to bring you some good tips here on keeping your house clean, keeping your house running. Basic maintenance. If you have those kind of allergy problems, respiratory, elderly people, you really need to take a look at what kind of filters you have in your house.
Yeah, never hurts.
All righty.
Thanks much. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've enjoyed this podcast and have derived some value from it, here's 4 things you can do. 1, tell your friends about this podcast. 2, hit subscribe on your podcast player. While you're there, leave a review. Feedback is so helpful. 3, subscribe to our newsletter by going to handymanprosradioshow.com and click on the subscribe button. We'll inform you of upcoming events, shows, and give you actionable tips for maintaining your home and property. 4, send us an email with your questions to questions@handymanprosradioshow.com. That's handymanprosradioshow.com. That's our show for this week. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week on the Handyman Pros Radio Show.